So we pull up to the house. We get out of the car. Now, we don't go right in because my wife's got to coach me before we go into any social event. She's got to fix me. She's always fixing me. My wife just here. Just, fix me up. She's got to tell me what to do. She's like, just smile. When you're in there, just smile at people. My wife don't think I smile around strangers. She thinks I got a mean resting face. Like if I'm not talking or smiling, it looks like I could murder your entire family. So I tell my wife, don't worry about it. It's just new people. We're going to have fun. So come up to the door. I ring the bell. They came to the door as a couple. That bothered me. Just send one representative to the door. Both of you don't have to come holding hands. Now you walk in, it's a house I've never been in before. As soon as I walk in, I look at everything around me. I walk into a new environment, I take a 360 and I take it in. I look for escape routes. My wife don't look at nothing. My wife's in the cloud. She just walk in. Could be a burning building. She would, whoa, wow, it's hot. You try over here. So I see the guy right away. He's got a t-shirt, #dad. And he tells me, can you take your shoes off, please? This is a shoe-free environment. I said, what the fuck did you just tell me to do? Shoes don't come off. My shoes come on once a night. That's it. I know some of you aren't even feeling this right now because you do this to people. Don't do this. Do not do this to grown people. All right? You're sitting there going, well, what's wrong with that? We have people take their shoes off all the time. We have white carpet. Why you got white carpet? Why? And my wife knows how I feel about the shoe thing. She taps me. She's like, just take them off. Take them off. These are nice people. So now I got to remove my shoes in front of two people I just met. Try and hold a conversation. It's strange. You're like, so how long have you lived here? So I dropped my shoes in the shoe farm. Now I'm walking around a stranger's house in my socks. Meeting other grown men in their socks. There's 4 guys in a sock circle. One guy came up, he was barefoot. I almost threw up in my mouth. Guy was barefoot. He wanted to talk serious topics. He's like, what do you think of ISIS? I said, what do you think about putting some socks?
Good morning. It is Sunday. Thank God it's Sunday. Happy Easter, April the 9th. And this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have no free lunch, broken health care, the rape of the mind, selective apathy, all that and more when I come back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
The system of private property is the most important guarantee of freedom, not only for those who own property, but scarcely less for those who do not. F.A. Hayek. A society that defends private property is a society of law and order, of self-preservation, of shared incentives. Protection of private property not only provides bare essential rights and liberties to the owners of private property, but to those aspiring to own property as well. We do not need to think merely of land, real estate, or real assets here. Sovereignty over one's bank accounts, stock portfolio, intellectual property patents, cars, toys, and clothes are all at the heart of a functioning society.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the indoctrination barrage from the rape of the mind.
The indoctrination barrage. The continual intrusion into our minds of the hammering noises of arguments and propaganda can lead to two kinds of reactions. It may lead to apathy and indifference, the I don't care reaction, or to a more intensified desire to study and to understand. Unfortunately, the first reaction is the more popular one. The flight from study and awareness is much too common in a world that throws too many confusing pictures to the individual. For the sake of our democracy, based on freedom and individualism, we have to bring ourselves back to study again and again. Otherwise, we can become easy victims of a well-planned verbal attack on our minds and consciences. We cannot be enough aware of the continual coercion of our senses and minds, the continual suggestive attacks which may pass through the intellectual barriers of insight. Repetition and Pavlovian conditioning exhaust the individual and may seduce him ultimately to accept a truth he himself initially defied and scorned. The totalitarians are very ingenious in arousing latent guilt in us by repeating over and over again how criminally the Western world has acted toward innocent and peaceful people. The totalitarian may attack our identification with our leaders by ridiculing them, making use of every man's latent critical attitude toward all leaders. Sometimes they use the strategy of boredom to lull people to sleep. They would like the entire Western world to fall into a hypnotic sleep under the illusion of peaceful coexistence. In a more refined strategy, they would like to have us cut all our ties of loyalty with the past, away from relatives and parents. The more you have forsaken them and their so-called outmoded concepts, the better you will cooperate with those who want to take mental possession of you. Every political strategy that aims toward arousing fear and suspicion tends to isolate the insecure individual until he surrenders to those forces that seem to him stronger than his former friends. And last but not least, let us not forget that in the battle of arguments, those with the best and most forceful verbal strategy tend to win. The totalitarians organize intensive dialectical training for their subjects, lest their doubts get the better of them. They try to do the same thing to the rest of the world in a less obtrusive way. We have to learn to encounter the totalitarians' exhausting barrage of words with better training and better understanding. If we try to escape from these problems of mental defense or deny their complications, the Cold War will be gradually lost to the slow encroachment of words and more words.
And that was The Indoctrination Barrage from The Rape of the Mind by Joost-Meerlo, M.D. Back in a minute. And now, why do you care? From Better Living Through Selective Apathy by M.C. Alexander.
Chapter 1. Why do you care? That question is typically communicated as a rhetorical one. Instead, I am asking it as a practical question. Why do you care? This is an oversimplification of a question which should be methodically used to critically and objectively analyze each piece of information presented to you. It can also be thought of as a rather simple multiple-choice question. Why do you care? 1. I care because this has a practical effect on my life in this moment. 2. I care because this may have a practical impact on my life in the future. 3. I care because this has a practical effect on something or someone I care about. 4. None of the above. In most cases, the information with which we are presented can be answered with none of the above if we choose to think about the circumstance or experience in an objective way. Some would counter by saying that we do not always have the power to choose what is important to us. Why not? Can we not separate a thing in and of itself from the reaction it might inspire in us? Can we not stop for a moment and analyze a thing in an objective way and ask questions about it? Asking specific questions about something in order to separate ourselves from its emotional connection requires discipline and practice. That practice is well worth the effort required to build change into our mental approach to external circumstances which are often outside our control. We can then separate out that which is not beneficial enough to warrant a specific emotional response and what is. One way to look at this method of thinking is selective apathy. What is selective apathy? Apathy is defined in the Oxford Dictionary as lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. What then is selective apathy? Selective apathy is purposefully making a choice regarding what you do not allow to take hold of your interest, enthusiasm, or concern. In short, it is deciding what you will and absolutely will not give a wet slap about. Apathy is a term which is frequently thought of in a negative way. However, apathy can be a useful response and solution to the problems of stress, anxiety, and disappointment. It can allow us to view something from a more objective standpoint, divorced from the emotional baggage that can come with it. Apathy and its ability to separate us from emotions can make possible a thoughtful response instead of a knee-jerk reaction. This gives us time to acquire all information necessary to formulate an educated opinion before we continue the interaction. In other words, it gives us time to read the entire article before we react to only the headline. It gives us time to process the information and educate ourselves, which reduces the anxiety caused by fear of not knowing more about that information. Sometimes we experience negative feelings when our full attention cannot be given to each and every worthy cause. We are almost constantly being inundated with information from a myriad of questionable sources, and we are expected by our family and friends to validate our relationships with them by investing ourselves emotionally along with them. They sometimes react negatively if they feel we don't immediately echo back that their cause du jour is important enough to warrant our undivided attention and support. In fact, they can see your own lack of a matched emotional response as some sort of invalidation of themselves. This is simply not sustainable as a way to interact socially. Thus, it is important for us to be selective with what we choose to give our attention, regardless of who is presenting us with the information. I am not advocating building a stone wall to keep out these invaders, but rather a firewall, which keeps out everything other than what you have chosen to let in. Look back at the multiple choice question I posed. Notice that 3 of the 4 responses to the question, "Why do you care?" have answers which show that you do, in fact, care. Selective apathy is not a lack of caring. The Oxford definition of apathy doesn't mention caring at all. Selective apathy is not choosing for what you have care. It is choosing for what you are willing to have interest, concern, or enthusiasm. I am rearranging that list from the Oxford definition in order to create the acronym ICE. Yes, I realize that it doesn't exactly convey a picture of a warm person, but think of it as advice to be generally chill about things. Interest, concern, and enthusiasm for things, which fall under the first 3 responses to that multiple choice question, are all good responses to have. If you are asking, "Why do you care?" then you are analyzing the information objectively. Let's look at some examples of how selective apathy may be applied to everyday situations. Helen. A young adult woman named Helen is on the telephone with her mother. Her mother makes a critical comment about a choice Helen recently made in her romantic social life. Helen's mother says, "You need to stop seeing that guy immediately." Helen is understandably frustrated and hurt and reacts by lashing out at her mother. She tells her mother to butt out and stop sticking her nose where it doesn't belong. She hangs up, and the two are now in a much worse place. Helen's mother only wanted Helen to avoid making a mistake, but Helen stiffened her neck and will probably make the mistake on purpose just to spite her mother. Helen is scheduled on a flight to visit the family next month and now is wondering if she should cancel the trip entirely. If Helen had been practiced at objectively looking at information coming her way, she might have made a couple of decisions which would have avoided both the fight and the resentment that comes with it. 1. Helen is an adult who makes her own decisions. Her mother can only offer advice, not command Helen to do something. Thus, the mother's criticism has no direct power over Helen's choice of actions. 2. What is the mother's motivation in making the comment? Is she trying to manipulate Helen? Is she trying to be hurtful? Or is she trying to help Helen avoid a bad experience? 3. Is there any reason Helen should give credibility to the criticism? If so, is that reason applicable and useful for Helen? If not, there is no reason to react, for the criticism carries no weight. It is often difficult for us to accept information we feel is being forced upon us. Applying the principle of selective apathy here would have been more challenging. Helen is an independent adult, and most independent adults resent being told what to do. Whenever someone trying to impart advice starts a sentence with "you need to" or "you have to," we tend to stiffen our necks. I am quite guilty of this, and often have to remind myself that the person might earnestly be trying to help me avoid a bad experience. A trusted friend could say to me, "You really need to put on a parachute before jumping out of this airplane," and I would probably have to convince myself not to jump without one purely out of spite. "You need to stop seeing that guy immediately," in and of itself, conveys no helpful information. Helen got the headline and reacted before reading the entire article. If Helen had been able to respond to her mother's comment and ask for the reason or reasons why her mother felt that way, she might have been able to give the information objective analysis and perhaps credibility. It could have avoided a fight as well. Helen could have chosen to not have interest, concern, or enthusiasm, ICE, about the comment in and of itself, because it did not convey useful information. It did not get to the root of her mother's concern. It was an expression, not an explanation. Helen could have chosen to be selectively apathetic about the comment her mother made, and instead questioned her mother about the reasons for the comment. Asking why is a critically important component of selective apathy. Why should I care? You need to stop seeing that guy immediately is just a bunch of vowels and consonants being lumped together and delivered in a certain order. It is nothing more than sound waves permeating the air. What is important here is the why of the matter. Asking people to describe the reasons behind their feelings helps both you and them. Selective apathy helps you to discard a potentially hurtful comment which has no inherent value, and then helps you get to the bottom of the matter directly and without a potentially harmful reaction. John. Here is another example from a different part of life. John is sitting in a waiting room at a large corporate organization. He really needs a job right now. He just graduated college and has a ton of student loan debt. There is a lot riding on the interview going well. John is so nervous that his hands are shaking, and he worries that if his nerves show too much, it will make him less attractive as a candidate for the position. He knows that a confident front makes for a better interview, but the butterflies in his stomach are playing full-court basketball. He looks great in his suit. He is qualified for the position, and he has done his homework about the organization and its needs. He is ready. He just doesn't feel confident. In the multiple-choice question, the answer, I care because this may have a practical impact on my life in the future, certainly applies here. Yes, he definitely should care. We usually fear the unknown, but the only unknown here is whether or not he will get the position. Can selective apathy be applied in such a situation? Yes. At this precise moment, he does not have the job. So, he has nothing to lose and everything to gain. There are other companies and other options for supporting himself. If this door doesn't open for him, another one will. It might not be immediately, and he might even have to build his own door. This position is not the beginning or end of his life. It is merely one single moment that might open up a path which wasn't previously open. It is not the only path. So, John can choose to not give this interview the amount of finality and weight he is giving it. He can and should take the interview seriously, but he can also know it's not the only interview. It's not the only job. If he doesn't get the job, then he will walk out of there with some excellent experience being interviewed. Here is another notion for John to consider. The company needs someone to fill this position. They are not there to pass judgment upon him. They are actively rooting for every candidate who walks through that door. They want to find the person they need for the job. They are rooting for John. They are on his side. They want him to be that ideal candidate. If John learns not to have too much concern for the interview, it could even free him up to enjoy the experience. He can enjoy the moment for what it is and have a better interaction with the person running the interview. Thus, he will have a better interview, which will help him toward meeting his goal of landing that job. In short, being selectively apathetic about the outcome of the interview can actually improve the chances of a better outcome. Frank.
And that was the first half of Better Living Through Selective Apathy by M.C. Alexander. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, Imprimis, a magazine from Hillsdale College, and Hillsdale's famous for being a college that does not accept any federal funding. So if you're going to go to Hillsdale College, you can't get a federal grant or federal loan to go there, so at least not a federal loan. And so what that means is they don't have to do all the things that the federal government then demands of other colleges. Okay, because you're getting federal funds, the taxpayer has the right to say how those funds are going to be spent. So by avoiding that, they avoid the conflict of interest. Now, this is the February edition, volume 52, number 2, and this is an article by John Abramson, and who is he received a BA from Harvard, his BMS from Dartmouth, and his MD from Brown. He served as a family physician for 22 years, etc., etc. So he's written an article, America's Broken Healthcare, Diagnosis and Prescription. And immediately what catches my eye here is the word broken. Anytime you declare any part of our society broken, the left will agree with you. Yes, 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 they say. Yes, it's broken and it needs to be reformed. Okay, our immigration system is broken, they say, and so do the Republicans. They join in. Stupidly. And the left wants to reform it. Now, if once you've conceded that something is broken and the left claims to have the fix for it, you're in a tough spot. How do you say no? How do you say no? It's a tougher spot than changing the subject slightly, and instead of saying it's broken, saying that America's healthcare is in need of adjustment, for instance, something of that nature. So that's the first thing I noticed. Now, then he goes ahead in his article and he is quoting, tells a little story about how he had an arrhythmia and that he had to go see some doctors. He's a doctor himself, and they got everything straightened out and he's okay. But he said the bad side was one of his doctors, when he was in intensive care, a cardiologist was doing rounds and came by and told him about that he should be taking statins. And, of course, since he's a doctor, he knows all the details about statins in terms of studies and whatnot. And so he basically embarrassed this cardiologist. And here he says, let's see. In other words, he was aware that his recommendation that I increase my use of statins was based entirely on incompletely vetted, commercially sponsored, and largely commercially influenced medical journal articles. So he says, gets the heart of the problem, the commercial takeover of the medical knowledge that doctors believe in and implement. And again, he states this as though it's a fact. And we're going to get into that here in a second. This is full of details masquerading as facts. And so you have to be able to see and understand that when you're reading it. So here, next paragraph, an easy way to gauge the health of a country and to compare the health of a country with that of other countries is to look at the average life expectancy. And if you look at a chart comparing average life expectancy in the U.S. with average life expectancy of 11 other wealthy countries from 1980 to 2021, you will find that in 1980, the U.S. was just about equal with those other countries. But as the years have progressed, life expectancy in the U.S. has fallen further and further behind. Now, what he's doing, he's not stating facts. He is stating details. He's providing details in the hopes that you are going to go ahead and take these details and assume that they are facts. It's very intimidating because if you want to argue with him, now you feel like, well, I've got to come back with some counterfacts, right? And I don't happen to have counterfacts, so you're stuck. But fortunately for you and me, they're not facts. Okay, unless he is the one that created this so-called chart that shows the life expectancy and he did a study or whatever, then he got the information from somewhere else. Okay, so let's say that it was from the Journal of American Medical Association. He gets this information. If he says to us, according to the Journal of American Medical Association, volume such, issue so-and-so on page this, that, and the other thing, and according to a study that was conducted by such and such university, so-and-so doctors, the health expectancy or the life expectancy in the United States is dropping. Now he's stated a fact. Okay, not just details. Now he can say he stated a fact. Then it becomes an issue of whether or not then there's more details before we're going to take it seriously, such as if this was a study conducted by a university or whatever, then how many people were studied? Okay, and again, studies only report on those studied. Just like in statistics, surveys only reveal things about those surveyed, not a larger audience. Okay, frequently studies are done with, say, 500 people, but there's over 360 million people in the United States. 500 people cannot be a representative sampling. It's just wrong. Common sense says no. But anyways, we go on to the next paragraph. 2019, prior to COVID, life expectancy in the U.S. had fallen relative to that of other countries so much that 500,000 Americans were dying each year in excess of the death rates of the citizens of those of other countries. Again, interesting details, fascinating details, but not facts for the same reason. It says, now combine this with the fact that we in the U.S. are paying an enormous excess over those other countries on health care. And he's claiming that we spend twice as much per person. And he names figures. Again, interesting details, but not facts. And then he comes to his conclusion, which means that our healthcare system is broken and needs fixing. No, because again, you haven't provided any facts. You've provided some very fascinating details, but not one single fact. So I have to reject your conclusion. So then he goes on talking about President Eisenhower, and then ask yourself, what ought to be the primary goal of American health care? To my mind, it is this: to maintain and improve individual and population health most effectively and efficiently. Well, that's all good for him. Maybe he's in part of the Biden administration, or he's looking to get a job in a future administration. But for me, the goal of healthcare is to maintain my health. I want to be able to be healthy, and I want to be able to have response good. What I really want is reliability. That's what I want. I don't know about anybody else, and I don't care. It's none of my business what you want or somebody else wants, or even this here doctor wants. I want reliability. So I had a situation, or a friend of mine had a situation when we were about 13 years old, where he got hit in the face with a baseball, and he ended up losing 3 pints of blood over a weekend. He got hit Friday, was taken out of the game, went to the hospital. He had a broken nose. They sutured the outside, but the inside, there was some kind of a cut or whatever, and the blood, they packed his nose, but the blood would run down the back of his throat, pool in his stomach, then he would vomit it up. And by Sunday, his parents decided they didn't like the look of him. He just didn't look good. He looked pale and ghostly and all that. So what did they do? No, they didn't go to the emergency room. Back in those days, this was back in the early 70s, you didn't go to the emergency room. You called your doctor. And that's what they did. They called the doctor. The doctor then asked them to ask him a question. Do you feel any tingling in your fingers and your toes? And he responded, no, I feel tingling all over my body. The doctor said, bring him in. And he didn't mean to the hospital, he meant to his office. So they took him to the office. The doctor took one look at him and said, take him now to the hospital. I will meet you there. Because that's the way the things were done. It was 24-hour-a-day medicine. If you had any kind of a problem or whatever, hiccup or whatever, you could pick up the phone and call. And you would, usually after hours, you're going to get an answering service. But you tell the answering service, hey, this is so-and-so, this is my number, this is the situation. The doctor is then called and told, the doctor calls you, and there used to be, even before that, was house calls, where you call the doctor and the doctor would come to your house. But in our day, it was that you'd call the doctor and the doctor would have you come into the office. Okay, they would meet you at the office and they would, go from there. You would triage, basically. And it was reliable. We went to the hospital, or he did, and they went to the hospital. The doctor was admitting with the patient's records and already telling the hospital staff what was wrong with the patient, what he needed. And that when the patient rolled up, there's a nurse outside with a wheelchair. They put him into the wheelchair, wheeled him up to his floor, put him in a bed, ready to go. That's reliable. Because the way it's done today, you have to go to an emergency room and talk to people you don't even know. You don't know them. They don't know you. They have no idea even what your blood type is. With your doctor at the hospital, again, you go straight into the hospital. You don't have to go and get triaged because the doctor's already done it for them. The doctor will tell him this is what his blood type is, etc. This is, how much he weighs and blah, 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 all the details that you would have to waste time in the emergency room giving to the emergency room physicians. Okay. That's reliability, is being able to have what I call 24-hour medicine, where I can pick up the phone and talk to my doctor 24 hours a day. Today, if you pick up the phone to call your HMO, the first thing you're going to hear is a recording that says, if this is an emergency, hang up and dial 911. You have to go to the emergency room. And again, deal with somebody that doesn't know you and waste time getting triaged. Okay. And this is the reason, by the way, that the emergency rooms are all clucked up. It's not because of illegal aliens. It's because of HMOs. HMOs created 9 to 5 medicine. It used to be medicine was 24 hours a day. Call anytime, day or night, on the weekends, holidays, whatever, and you can get your doctor to call you back and at least talk about whatever the problem is. Not so today. Doctors are now 9 to 5, weekends and holidays off. You got a problem, you got to go to the emergency room or to what is euphemistically called urgent care. And again, they don't know anything about you either. They don't know your blood type. They don't know your height and weight. So all that has to be done there. Wasting valuable time. So that's the thing, is what I'm interested in as far as our healthcare system is simply restore 24-hour-a-day medicine. Restore the relationship between the patient and the doctor. And to do that, we simply have to get the HMOs out of the way. The insurance companies got in the way because they went to Congress and they said, let us run the healthcare so-called system and we will reduce costs. Okay? Because what they were going to do is they would have death panels. And we used to see this in the beginning of HMOs. And if somebody wanted some experimental care or they wanted this, that, or the other thing, they had to get the HMOs. If you wanted to see a specialist, you had to get the HMO's approval. They had to say yes to that. And in order to cut costs, they're going to have to say no. What that means is there's going to be a lot more people that are going to have to suffer. There's going to be a lot more people that are going to end up dying. So, and we've seen there was a guy that was HIV positive. He went out on the freeway in Southern California with a shotgun, held out a sign about HMOs and his HIV, and they wouldn't treat him, or they wouldn't give him they wouldn't approve extra experimental, etc. And he blew his brains out right there on the freeway. Then we had a situation where a mother in Glendale, she had taken her daughter she was having suffering. She was in late stage cancer, but there was supposedly a new treatment, and mom wanted to get that new treatment. And the HMO said no. The probability that your daughter will find use for it is negligible. It's just not going to, no. It's too expensive, and there's highly unlikely your daughter's going to get any benefit. And then the uproar, the outcry was unbelievable. So the HMO changed its mind. But too late, the daughter died anyhow. And I suppose the mother went ahead and sued and all that stuff. So the point is, HMOs didn't do the job they promised to do. They didn't restrict or cut healthcare costs. They didn't do a damn bit of that. And so let's go back to reliability. We tried the HMO experiment. It failed. Time to go back to what we know works. Dealing directly with our doctors, 24-hour-a-day medicine. So, and then again with this here article by Dr. John Abramson, this is a guy that's been brainwashed. He writes the article in a way that is, again, the way the left would do it. The left is are the people that will try to bully and intimidate you with details. And they use these details in order to make you think that they're facts. Lead you to water, hope that you drink. And hope that you conclude that they're facts, because then their argument has weight. It has what the left likes to call gravitas. And so here is Dr. Abramson doing exactly the same thing. Shame on him. I don't know that he's a lefty. If this is in Imprimis magazine, I rather doubt it. Because Hillsdale College has a tendency to be very conservative. So I rather doubt it. But he's a brainwashed individual, what I call an ersatz conservative. He's not truly conservative. And it isn't so much that what I'm concluding we should, what should happen, that we should go back to doctor-patient relationships that is conservative. What's conservative is the way you present information. You do it in a responsible way. You don't claim that details are facts. Facts are facts. Back in a minute. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. So I'm reminding you that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.